also I note the high level of industry engagement and the, let's say, coupling of industry and academic sectors in a way, and that funding is rewarded based on also the engagement in vocational training and so on. So that's quite an interesting model, something other countries could potentially learn from. Last question for you, Heli, before we move on to the next panelist. It's regarding your prioritization. So TI OPVET is not exclusively an energy program, right? It also has an emphasis on other global gateway sectors. So how do you, when you decide funding allocation within your call for proposals, how do you decide what it needs to be prioritized towards energy, what needs to be agri or other sectors? Thank you.
Yes, the OPVET program is a means to implement the European Union external investment strategy that is called the Global Gateway. The strategy supports public and private sectors to invest with a focus on climate, energy, green energy, of course, sustainable transport, digitalization, health, education, and research. The opportunity-driven VET program follows the same priority areas and related value chains. We have had a call for proposals, which has by now been closed, and we are still working on the outcomes. So the criteria for selecting those successful grants would be to the opportunity-driven approach. How well is the proposal linked with the private sector and linked with the investments, as well as concrete job opportunities that there may exist. In the relevant sectors. In addition, the program also offers a technical assistance facility that supports partners to better reorient skills development towards concrete employment opportunities. The technical assistance facility can offer, for example, a mapping of employment opportunities and skills needed, support vocational education centers and private sector companies to reorient towards this approach, their ongoing programs that they may have, and also to support establishment of partnerships between public and private sector, and to develop tools and methods to assess the impact of skills development in value chain growth. If you want to hear more about this, you are welcome to our spotlight session tomorrow at 2:30 in the afternoon, where we will be highlighting the critical role of skills development in attracting and retaining investment in renewable energy projects.
Thank you. Thank you, Heli. So reiterating that invitation tomorrow afternoon, if you're interested in more information and deliberations on the TI OPVET initiative, you are welcome in that workshop. You can contact Heli or another member of the TI OPVET team to express your interest. Turning to the UK now, well, UK funded program, let's say. I turn to Kai. So the Transforming Energy Access Learning Partnership, TLP, that's quite a mouthful, is a program that supports higher education across Africa and Asia. So Kai, could you share some of the learnings you've had in that program so far, and also perhaps a bit on which type of professionals you're training through TLP?
Absolutely. And first of all, I just wanted to say a big thank you for inviting us back here and for putting on another great event. It's much appreciated. So TLP basically supports higher education in two ways. We focus on the level of master's students and we focus on the level of working professionals. So at the level of master's students, we basically consult with universities. We currently have partnered with about 30 universities around Africa, South Asia, and the Pacific Islands. And basically we help graduates, or we help develop and cultivate graduates to basically contribute to their energy sector in their region. So we do this basically by supporting universities in developing highly localized curricula, which again is going to be relevant to their specific challenges and needs in their country or region. Now, renewable energy is still quite a young industry. We don't have decades worth of learning material to basically learn what the best practices are, and as a result, there are some significant gaps that still need to be addressed in renewable access or renewable energy education. So at this point, we have supported universities in developing 3 different courses, one called Local Solutions to Energy Access, one called Mini Grids Planning and Design, and another one called Appliances for Off-Grid Applications. Now, these courses all take quite a holistic approach, so we don't only give the students technical knowledge, we also look at other aspects that are very important in renewable energy access, such as finance and business models, policy and regulation, community engagement, and the supply chain, to name a few. Now, while we provide the framework for universities, it's actually them who are doing most of the work. They are responsible for putting together all of the content, for developing the assignments, and for basically localizing the content to be as relevant as possible to their unique challenges. So how do they do this? They might do it through things such as case studies of best practices or some big failures in the area, local site visits, and looking at local laws, policies, and regulations. The type of student that typically attracts is undergraduate students who have recently graduated, usually in a technically oriented degree, such as engineering. That's probably a vast majority of our students, but we do also have some other students coming from streams such as physical science, sciences, statistics, environmental science, and economics in some cases as well. Moving on then to working professionals. So we offer continued professional development courses to, again, working professionals also who are either working in the energy access field or in some cases fields with some overlap, such as oil and gas, for example, which can support these professionals in making a transition from their industry into the renewable energy sector. So we're basically responsible for conducting market research and then doing the full scope, so the design, the development, and the delivery of the CPD courses. And since we are based in South Africa, we've managed to get them all accredited by the Engineering Council of South Africa so that they can get their necessary points for professional progress, we can say, in their careers. And we've been able to transfer these CPD credits through to other countries' regulatory engineering bodies as well, so it doesn't go to waste. And it means that pretty much anyone from anywhere in the world is able to take our courses, which are all run online, asynchronous, and somewhat flexible to accommodate the modern working person, generally with a full-time job and family responsibilities as well. So flexibility, we've found, is absolutely key. Here we've developed 3 courses so far, with another one in the works. The first one is on sustainability and efficiency in energy systems. The next one, which was very high demand, was looking at machine learning, artificial intelligence, and big data for renewable energy, and looking at how data analytics can help to optimize systems around the world. And lastly, Future Female Leaders in Energy, which was a CPD course aimed specifically at women working in junior roles in the energy sector. And the idea was basically to give them technical skills as well as various management and leadership skills, so they can basically be cultivated into positions of management and leadership down the line, which is obviously vitally important, especially in Africa, where we have still got quite a traditional workforce in the sense that the energy sector is mostly male dominant. So being able to empower women to take these positions of leadership, we believe, is a very important step in the right direction towards a more inclusive sector.
Thank you, Kai. Very interesting also the aspect of reskilling from existing fossil fuel sectors, if you will. It's true that often we think exclusively about skilling new people to come into the space, but there's also the whole reskilling question. So building on that, you made a good bridge to also what Heli was saying about the link between job opportunities offered in, for example, the private sector and training. What are some of the lessons learned you have on that? How do we ensure a strong link between educating people and then placing them in jobs afterwards?
So I think, like many areas in life, communication is key. We've noticed that the most significant challenge between academia and industry is a pretty significant lack of communication. So the challenge is that industry generally perceives recent graduates as lacking the necessary skills, obviously experience, since they haven't had exposure to the industry yet. what they have said is that there's a great level of theoretical knowledge, but they lack when it comes to the practical, more hands-on applications in the job or in the workplace. On the other hand, academia doesn't think that students are given enough opportunities, so to basically inquire into what some of the needs and challenges were at last year's event of the Energy Access Investment Forum hosted in Lagos. We hosted a roundtable discussion between industry and academia, so we were joined by 10 of our university partners from TLP, as well as 10 industry professionals representing various players in the sector. And just to summarize a few of the key points that we found there, so some of the academia's needs and asks were firstly that industry provides more internship and work experience opportunities, obviously to give the students first-hand exposure so they can be more prepared once they enter the workplace. Another request was that more master's level projects be funded. This is obviously a win for the master's students in the institutions, as well as the industry or the company might fund a specific project that's very relevant and applicable to the work that they're doing, which of course would benefit them in the longer run as well. Scholarship opportunities are another great option. So companies would obviously have the guarantee of having a highly skilled graduate upon completion should they fund their opportunities. And site visits to projects, practical demonstrations, visits to mini-grid sites, those types of things, also very good for giving the students hands-on practical experiences. And the last ask from universities was basically to get clearer expectations from industry as to what graduates should be able to do. So basically, again, the industry perceived the theoretical experience to be, or the theoretical knowledge to be exceptional, with a significant lack in the practical hands-on. Then quickly, just to look at what some of industry's needs and asks were. Firstly, access to top talent, that's quite a no-brainer. More communication from universities about what their needs are in order to help cultivate these highly skilled graduates. And lastly, a clearer understanding as to what universities are actually teaching their students so that they can have a better sort of workplace integration program in place.
Yeah. Thank you, Kai, and we will have another session tomorrow as well where we deep dive into that industry-academia exchange and build on the debate from last year to have additional exchange between universities and industry. So last but not least, last question to you, sorry, is then, okay, so we have specific role allocations we've discussed. We have how do we train people? How is it funded in your experience? What should public sector and what should private sector fund in these training programs?
So a quick disclaimer, finance is not at all my area of expertise or my domain at all, but basically what we've seen so far, or what we've discussed is that firstly, skills development programs, especially in developing regions, should be made as accessible as possible. So obviously education is very foundational. It forms basically the layer upon which we can build an entire society. And for that exact reason, governments should be encouraged to partially or even fully subsidize and fund these programs because energy especially forms the backbone of society and is critically important in things like economic and GDP growth over the long run. So if governments were to provide more grants and more subsidies and even partially funding, it would basically lower the cost to take these educational programs and thereby make it more accessible to people. On the other hand, private, same story. Ideally, we'd like to see more funding from their side as well. Why should they even bother doing this? What's in it for them? Well, we found that obviously if they are funding certain skills programs which might be specific to their niche within the sector or their industry, they'll have good skills alignment, which means they know exactly the type of employee that they're going to be getting once they graduated. They know exactly what skills, knowledge, and competencies they should have. Brand positioning and industry leadership. If a company is seen as giving back to the industry and basically sponsoring these initiatives and funding educational programs, that's going to position them as an industry leader and basically someone that the rest of the industry can look up to, and essentially they'd be setting the example to the rest of them, and in a sense also they'd be building some significant goodwill. Access to innovation and research and development. So over here, if companies were to work with educational institutes, higher education, skills development programs and so forth, they'd have access to more innovation and research and development. For example, where if they were to fund a master's level project, then they'd have access to basically that very niche research that had been conducted for that reason. And then lastly, access to a pretty diverse talent pool, which of course is also critically important in creating a more inclusive and progressive sector. So it's also quite difficult to implement, and I don't know exactly how one would go about this, but also in developing regions, I feel that offering training for free to people who might be semi-educated or have some sort of background but are still unemployed would be a great step in the right direction, and there could be some sort of payback agreement arranged that once they are employed within that sector and earning a salary as a result of having upskilled themselves through that course, they then go through a, I don't know, 6 month to a year payback period on having taken that course. Yeah, that's all from my side. Thank you, Jens.
Thanks a lot, Kai. Nice bridge to Carlo, who is also from the private sector. So let's hear a bit from Carlo on his experience. So you've been active on the field, implementing trainings. What are some of the key experiences and success factors in rollout of training, in your opinion? Can you share a bit, shed a light on some of the success stories, perhaps?
Yeah, thanks, Jens, first of all, for inviting me to this panel. And wow, success stories, very optimistic. Let me tell you, with our company and Green, we provide technical assistance amongst our services. We design and deliver trainings to a vast audience, so starting from the public officers, government officers, discussing about policies, how to set tariff schemes, until the last guy on the field that is in charge of opening and closing the fence and just pushing on and off on a breaker. So I think that when we talk about energy, the topic is also vast, but even the needs and the gaps that we see directly are so different. And that means that a key factor for the success in the training is a good design, and to tailor the content and the structure of any capacity building program on the expectations that we have on the selected beneficiaries. That means that sometimes, being more specific, it comes also to having courses and in bilingual approaches. So you remember that in Africa, English, French, or Portuguese and Spanish are the second language. So sometimes we try to involve local communities or local people to translate into the local language and increase effectively the knowledge transfer. This might seem a minor thing, but it's really important. And I think that AI is very helpful, can be a very helpful tool also to maybe translate videos, translate information. And I can say that this has been very appreciated and effective during our training courses. Second point, I think that practical-based training can be also more, let's say, easy to understand rather than theoretical lessons or classes that are just like university as European style. So, as I said, from government officers to people on field, there is also a huge difference in literacy. So that means that we have to adapt the content and the way we try to transfer knowledge to the people. Last point, I have to say that the success of a training depends as well on what happens after the training. So sometimes we think that just delivering some frontal classes, 12 hours, 16 hours is enough, but the real issue is that if you don't practice, you forget everything. And I'm sure that everybody has his own experience with the university or something that has been studying and now doesn't remember a thing. So I think that monitoring and evaluation and trying to, use the training then to bring those people to effective and practical action is the key factor to have things really, to put things in action. This is why we try to push also for training programs that have like refresh sessions or laboratories where we can still put in action what we just learned during the session. And yeah, one last point is that we are discussing generally about energy, but within the energy there are different sources and needs. Most of us, maybe we are referring to solar, but there are different skills required for hydropower projects, for hydrogen, for biomass. For example, hydrogen, I think that the conventional education system is really slow to be responsive to the market needs. So I'm wondering how long will it take to have in our university, an African university, some specific curriculum for hydrogen? Well, the market is already hungry for these competencies. I think we should put a little bit of pressure to make an alignment on what the market needs and what the education, private or public, offers to the audience. Thank you.
Great points. Thank you, Carlo. I think it's a nice synergy with what Heli was saying as well, because actually TI OPVET trains exactly for actual employment opportunities. And you also mentioned, let's say, practical training and for what happens after the job. And I think Kai also mentioned placement programs, right, after universities. So quite a bit of commonality between the panelists so far. Now turning to the question on funding. So what should be, I guess, similar to question two before, what should be the role of private sector? What should be the role of public sector, in your opinion, both in rollout and funding?
Yeah, good question. I have my personal opinion. I don't want to split the audience about this. I think that in our experience, the private sector should lead this process, because the private sector can somehow anticipate the innovation and the new market needs. So we should consult private sectors regarding the new needs and gaps and competencies that are required in the market. This is because most of the people there wants to gain a higher education. They are looking to the specific education that can open him a chance to get a job in the private sector. I mean, we assume that there are more job opportunities in the private sector rather than in public, maybe on government places. That means that I see this primary role for the private sector to give inputs and try to align the content of the education's curriculum. But on the other side, I think that the public sector can drive the right policies and they can ensure alignment with national and interregional energy strategies. So if on the public side we align all the discussion and the objective to what is shared among other countries at a regional level, then we can ensure that we are all going in the right direction. So at the strategy level for the country and the market as well will follow, providing their inputs.
Thank you so much. And well, it's not my position as a moderator to take a to take a stance on this, but I can perhaps give a shout out to some of our members who actually support capacity building at quite a significant scale. Schneider Electric, for example, through their entrepreneurship program. Both ComApp and Victron also have training academies. So this is something we'll be discussing more tomorrow in the Industry Academia Roundtable, how we synergize those efforts and link them with the academic trainings and vet trainings as well. Lastly, I think it's also worth noting what you mentioned before, Kai, on certification. You mentioned you've received accreditation, I think, in South Africa. And if I'm not mistaken, Carla, you've also been working on certification and accreditation, standardization programs, for example, STAR-C. Could you perhaps also shed a bit of light on that? What are some approaches to harmonization and certification that could benefit the rollout of training?
Well, there will be really a dream. We've been working together on a project with United Nations, so we know the challenges. I can, I think, contribute to the discussion for this audience, giving you the outcomes of a project run by UNIDO, aiming at providing harmonization of certifications and skills qualification amongst region in West Africa, East Africa, and South Pacific. Well, I think that it's not easy to have all the countries sitting together and be aligned on how to certify some skills. For example, solar installer, solar suppliers, which are the qualification framework, the skills under which I can say that someone is qualified and able to work in different countries. This is something that requires a long process, and it's been very hard because sometimes in some area you have similar needs. I can say in East Africa and West Africa were similar conditions, and that makes it very, let's say, easier to understand that an harmonized curriculum can be used and be compliant to the needs of different countries. For example, we had a different experience in South Pacific, where, you know, different islands, different governments, so they have also different markets, and down there it has been really harder to transfer this message that we need to qualify people and make them able to move within the countries and with the same certification scheme, and make them able also to move and be entering different markets. But given that, I think that the industry can be also supporting this by participating in aligning the curriculum for the university and academia, and participating at least as maybe a more organized industry. I mean, the people we are having in this conference, we're working in different countries, maybe in some similar industries, so we can give a really a good contribution for harmonization of development of skills and curriculum and qualification framework to different countries.
Absolutely, thank you, Carlo. We'll get back to you in a moment. So let's turn to Eugenia, but while we do so, I'd encourage everyone to think about questions they'd like to ask the panel, and then right after Eugenia's intervention, we can take a few questions to mix it up. So over to you, Eugenia. So you represent private sector and DRE, and especially the core initiative we're implementing. In your experience, what incentives or support structures would encourage more private investment in workforce development? And can you perhaps give a few examples from the fields of the trainings that have been successful? Thank you.
Thank you, Jens. I think as a starting point, I would like to point out what core means. Core means cornerstone of raw electrification. This program was born out of the need to provide capacity building, of course, given the skills gap that exists, to provide capacity building in order to fast track or to facilitate deployment of renewable energy, in view of the fact that 2030 is very close. And under core, we focus on training of trainer programs to universities, to including TVET colleges, academia training and vocational training, as well as communities. And our packages are actually ready-to-use packages, which cover quite a broad number of areas. These include mini-grid technical design, installations, as well as operations and maintenance. We also cover areas of relating to productive use of equipment, and this is especially for rural communities, where they need to engage in such activities to sustain livelihoods. In terms of sustainability of the program, I think as my colleagues have also indicated, the issue of collaboration and public-private partnership is very important. We do collaborate with the private sector, who are some of our key stakeholders. We do collaborate with energy associations in the different countries. Towards the end of last year, we conducted 3 trainings in Southern Africa, in Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. In Malawi and Zambia, we collaborated with universities, and the universities actually facilitated in terms of providing training facilities, as well as assisting with the identification and screening of potential candidates for training. In Zimbabwe, we worked with the association, the Renewable Energy Association of Zimbabwe. And we also had UNESCO also collaborating, as well as the utility through their training center. In Zimbabwe, I think we got the benefit of having the training done at the utility training center, where there's actually a mini grid that has been installed, which really, I think, helped in terms of assisting the participants with gaining some practical insights into how such installations, as well as visualizing what exactly happens. And coming to the issue of what should be done, I think it's very important to provide incentives, especially to the private sector, because if you provide such training incentives and rebates, you find that they'll be forthcoming in terms of wanting to train people on the ground, and especially where such skills are lacking. What came out, I think, in actually all the trainings that we did, there is the general, I think, concern that Africa has become the dumping ground for some of these, mini-grid or renewable energy equipment. And we also have bogus installers. So without training, you risk, I think, having fires, you risk having, equipment with very short lifespans. So the issue of incentivizing the private sector is quite important. Tax rebates are also, I think, an important consideration that should also be looked at for the private sector. Co-funding, I think if we do provide, say, grants through the development community, or especially through the development community, so that we leverage additional funding is also an important, I think, consideration that should also be taken into account. Then regulation, I think, is another important thing. If you have streamlined regulation, which does not prohibit, training, it also facilitates, I think, the entry of private sector and trainers in the sector. Then generally transparency in terms of, the actual training that is being provided, as well as also building a knowledge bank or knowledge management tools is, I think, another area that should also be looked at. And of course, I think let's beat the drum about private sector entities that provide training. Because if we sort of, profile them, as well as, market them, it also, I think, helps them as a form of incentive. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugenia. I'll ask you one last question, and in the meantime, audience, feel free to indicate if you have a question while she's speaking. I'll just be scouting around in the room if any hands are being indicated so we don't lose time between her intervention and the questions. So Eugenia, I guess a similar question to the other panelists, and you touched a little bit upon it already, but what is, in your opinion, the role of private sector, and what's the role of public sector in these training programs? Who should fund what? And then also maybe you can give a little bit of future perspective at CORE. What's the next frontier for the CORE initiative, building on all the lessons we've learned training 3,000 practitioners so far? Thank you.
Thank you, Jens. I think the starting point, I think, is probably maybe the private sector. They know, I think they have the trajectory of where they want to go in terms of providing, in terms of, the businesses that they run, and what sort of skills are on the ground. Do these skills exist? A capacity gap analysis needs to be undertaken, and maybe they need to work then with the vocational training centers, as well as maybe, in some instances, in South Africa, I think I will agree with me, we have skills education and training associates, we call them SITAs, so that, they get such training accredited. What I noticed, I think, in all the trainings that we did, there is nothing as, as gratifying as someone getting a certificate at the end of the training. So private sector should be in it in terms of, prescribing what their needs are. Then government should be there to provide an enabling environment and ensure that, whatever training is there also gets some accreditation.
Thank you. So to reiterate, government should facilitate and accredit so that it has credibility and backing as well, and private sector should play an active role in training, rollout, funding as well. Make sure that it's aligned with actual job opportunities to make the link to the other interventions. Are there any questions in the audience at this point? Otherwise, I can of course keep going with mine, but I think it would be interesting to hear opinions or questions from the audience. Yes, gentleman in the back. Thank you. Should I come with the microphone? Okay.
I'm Professor Kanti Kanyersoki, basically an engineer, solar energy engineer, but now into agricultural engineering, especially in value addition. I want to talk about, or I want to ask about industry, academia, cooperation. I think one of the speakers mentioned that there is a lot of gap in between there. With the universities knowing what the industry wants, and the industries knowing what the universities want. My experience after working for a long time in industry and also in universities is that I find, particularly in African universities, I've worked in Nigeria, I've worked in South Africa, I've worked in Botswana, I've worked now in Uganda, I've worked in Kenya. In all these universities, first of all, I find there's a lot of bureaucracy in changing the curricula. It may take, for example, anything up to 2-3 years to change the curriculum. Industry doesn't have that time. I want to establish a process now within this financial year, and I want it. But if it needs certain skills, which the universities need to give to the students, the universities will take 4 or 5 years before they do that. So I don't know, in your experience elsewhere, outside the continent, whether, how you have gone about this. The other thing is on intellectual property, as far as the industry-university cooperation is concerned. Most of the universities here think that because research is being done in their place, okay, we necessarily take the intellectual property, even when that intellectual property has very little to do, actually, with what the university is doing. But an industry, an industry which may sponsor a student to do some research and maybe come with something beneficial to the industry is forced then to, may be forced either to forfeit the intellectual property or to share it with the university. I don't know how elsewhere you people go about it. I thank you.
Thank you. So I guess to reiterate to the panel, 2 questions. One is how to, let's say, accelerate processes on and limit bureaucracy on changes of curricula and trainings. And the second one, yes, what was the second one? Sorry, it's been a long day. On IPs, sorry, the transfer of IPs, of course. Yeah. So any takers on any of the 2 questions?
I can comment on this. I think that you ask about experience in other countries. Well, I think that industry and academia, they have a good communication. I think the industry, the companies, they know the importance of being coordinated and aligned among themselves. And even academia, I think the university, they are constantly discussing on how to be updated on the new trending topics, let's say, and matters, and they are pretty much aligned. The problem is that government don't. So let me tell you a story. I was building a few years ago a mini grid in Rwanda. I was working with for an energy developer, and we hired a Uganda contractor to build part of the distribution line. So when the Uganda contractor came to Rwanda to do this, they were stopped by the Rwandan government because the people and the company qualification were not recognized in the Rwandan standards. So they had to undergo a new accreditation, let's say, process with, easy to understand cost implication and time implication. So that means that a Ugandan contractor with a proven track record and skilled people which showed their certificates of university and college study were not recognized in Rwanda. But I'm sure that professors in the Ugandan university, they taught the same things in Rwanda. So it's not an academia problem. It's not an industry problem. It's that governments, they never provided a standard to unlock this labor transfer. And this happened again after a couple of years in DRC with Burundian or Rwandan contractors. We had the same problems. So I think what we need is to continue with the update of the topics within the academia, with the inputs from the private sector. But if we don't get the harmonization between the countries' standards, we will not really unlock this possibility of having a wider job market and even a transfer of knowledge between countries that have the opportunities of having innovation in some projects and they are not able to transfer this to other countries. I don't know if I satisfied you with my answer, Professor.
Thank you. I would like to weigh in by maybe looking at the example of Namibia. Namibia is trying to develop its hydrogen economy. And, well, they're taking a very proactive approach, which brings together a number of stakeholders. They've actually formulated a task force, which meets every month. It includes the developers, the Ministry of Higher Education, TVET colleges, universities, the private sector, as well as, the GIZ, because I think most of the work is being driven, and I think there are a lot of lessons to learn from the German economy, and also to avoid reinventing the wheel and making mistakes. So I think a proactive approach which brings together all the stakeholders is also, I think, a way of addressing it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I can also just give an example from my side on the harmonization that Carlo is mentioning, so in West Africa with DRE, there is actually also a coordination and harmonization across countries. We've also been partnering with DRE on that, and as well as NGreen through the Star C program, especially also an examination of off-grid professionals. So I think that's a good example we could take to East and Southern Africa and learn from. Are there additional questions from the audience at this point? Yeah. Several, actually.
Thank you so much. Sorry, you can't see me because of this. So my name is Daniel Ochek. I work for African Management Institute, AMI. We've been supporting workplace learning and developing entrepreneurs across Africa. As of now, we're in 40 countries across Africa, and livelihoods, including women, impacted are over 1.4 million. So we got a recent grant to support, develop, empower women in the energy sector, as well as practitioners from EHI. So I wanted to know from your side, because most of you have been talking about workplace learning on the panel, what are the statistics like for the number of completion rates for the learning interventions for the women? And and of course, in totality, the number of learners impacted by the interventions, especially the Future Females program that one of you talked about. What is the completion rate? Are we seeing any tangible outputs from that? Is the sector from where you're sitting expanding in terms of women taking up leadership positions? Uganda is doing very well. I mean, the PS is here. She would mention how well we are doing in terms of women leadership. Sorry, the mic. So I just wanted to get in terms of numbers, how well are we doing? And looking forward to tomorrow 2 p.m. and discussing further on what more we can do together. Thank you.
So in terms of the completion rate for the Future Female Leaders in Energy program, so we do provide ongoing consistent support throughout. So we do understand as well that people do have work responsibilities. Often they're working full-time as well as doing this to further their career. And a lot of the time the women also have family responsibilities, which takes up significant amounts of time as well. So we've embedded flexibility into the program to a pretty big extent, and we are willing to, when needed, basically give extensions where necessary and guide them throughout the process as best we can. So at this point, the completion rate has been about 90%.
Thank you, moderators. I'm Aline Tropusi from Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, Uganda. I have 2 questions. One is to do with the training facilities. We have existing training centers which may not be running well and don't actually have renewable energy programs because of challenges with resources. So how best can we tap into the programs that we're able to train a number of young people, technicians or engineers who are interested? And then 2, the focus has been more on universities. Now, how do we in Uganda, we have a challenge of graduates. They graduate electrical, they love renewable energy, but they just end there. So how do we bring in that group of people who have graduated and would want to help us move the renewable energy agenda? Thank you.
So the first one was, how do we tap into the existing initiatives that are ongoing? For example, a training center in Uganda would need capacity building support to roll out more training, right, and improve training, for example, on renewables. Any takers, for example, Kai or Eugenia, on how someone can apply to TLP or CORE?
Well, I'll take my cut then. Maybe Kai, you also have to come in. I think what we also I think observed similar issues in the countries that we have conducted training, and the countries that we looked at with, I think 3 recently, and the Zimbabwe setup, we also worked through the utility. And the utility also expressed interests because they already have a facility that is a mini grid that is installed, as well as other, renewable energy technologies. So they've indicated that, they would want to identify and build a database of those graduates so that they can also come in, I think, and, facilitate so that our training can also be deployed. And the training that we provided is training of trainers. So we are hoping that these people we have trained will also, go on and train other people. And our ask is that, they report, the numbers that they would have trained. So yeah, we also are taking that into consideration. It's one of the things that that was highlighted. Thank you.
In terms of accessing some of TLP's CPD programs, those are the only ones accessible to the general public. Obviously, with our partner universities, these courses that we support them in developing are only offered through those universities, so they would need to enroll at one of those to, even so, it's not our direct work. We provide the framework rather than the actual content, courses and assessments and so forth. So the most direct way to, basically do anything TLP related would be to do a CPD course where anyone can apply. Hopefully they've got some sort of technical background or at least a few years of experience working in the energy access and renewable energy sectors, just so they aren't completely lost. Some of the courses are quite technical, and ideally we want to see as high a completion rate as possible, so we basically do a brief application process, and as long as they match the minimum criteria, then anyone's welcome.
Thank you, and thanks for the good questions. So last question from my side as a sort of closing statement. We have a lot of people here in the room, all different types of stakeholders. We'll have a networking reception afterwards. What would be the ideal person to come to you now? What type of partner are you most looking for?
I think they are all equally important, but I would say I'm looking for funders, because what's very important is that I think there's so much demand for training. There are gaps, and we would want to ensure sustainability of the training programs. While, under core we offer readily packaged programs, but there are also some costs in terms of running these programs. So partnership with funders, for me, is very important. Thank you.
It is the investment forum after all, isn't it? Kai?
Innovators.
I think for us it would be a bigger or smaller company who has had a successful partnership with the public sector or private sector TVET provider.
That's specific, but we might have quite a few of those, so do come and look for Heli in the reception.
I'm one of the small companies there. Yeah. Now, I'd say we're looking for donors to support them into monitoring of their grants or programs and ensure they can get to their targets, and as well for the impact evaluation.
Thank you, perfect. With that, I think we've come to an end for this panel. So I would like to invite everyone to join me in thanking the panelists for this excellent discussion.
Thank you very much.
Audience questions.